Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of We Get It. My name is Karine, and this week and in the weeks coming, we're going to do a little something different when we introduce ourselves. We have wonderful community members within the YACC community who are living with a disability. For some, it is hearing impaired, for some, visually impaired. We know that we're living in an online world now. Everything is on video. So we wanted to do better for them to make these videos and our resources more accessible. And one thing someone said is, first, if you want to catch the closed captioning of this episode, you can watch it on Young Adult Cancer Canada YouTube channel. And if you are living with a visually impaired, visual disability, I'm going to describe myself a little bit. So my name is Karine. I'm program director at YACC. I'm a white French Canadian, if you can hear it in my accent. Even though 12 years in Newfoundland, that accent is not going anywhere. Brown hair, I'm sitting in my home office, which is really kind of like a bedroom. Pretty rainy day today, so lights are on and I've been on and it's morning, but it's okay. So this is kind of who I am and where I'm at. And I am with wonderful company today. I'm with Bonnie Loom and Peter Bovel. And then I was like, I should have asked you, Peter, how do you say your last name again? Bovolaneas? Did I get it? Oh my God. I'm with these two beautiful, amazing humans who are long-time YACC community members. And today, together, we're going to spend half an hour or so talking about what it means to kind of really be privileged and lucky to grow old within the YACC community. So we know it's not a reality for everyone. But we also know that we do have some long-time YACCers, as we call them, and Peter and Bonnie are certainly part of that and a big part of YACC. So welcome you both. Thank you so much for being here. How about we start with a little introduction so people know who you are and how beautiful you are. So let's go with Peter first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter. I am a two-time testicular cancer survivor. I've been with YACC since, 2000 and because, although over 39, I will let you know that there are grays in my beard. So there is definitely a little bit of aging going on in that process. I am a Caucasian male and identify as Greek by descent. I'm also an out survivor, so a very proud member of the LGBT community. For those who are visually impaired, just think of me as devastatingly handsome, balanced out with, try to think of it like Zoolander. I like to call it chemo steel, just like stare that cancer down, where I'm like, yeah, eyebrow just went, I'm on. So I typically use humor as a coping mechanism. So if I'm making you experience the giggles on the audio and the visual front, boom.
Boom. This is wicked. Thank you, Peter. And how about you, beautiful Bonnie? Tell us about you.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I was diagnosed with composite lymphoma consisting of 95% large B cell and 5% Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was 29 at the time. I am Chinese Canadian. I have long black hair and I wear glasses, and I'm sitting in my kitchen/dining area.
In a beautiful condo with a pretty wicked view, people of Toronto, by the way. Thank you, you both. Thank you for being here. We could think of a million reasons why we would want to talk together today. So we've known each other, like Peter muffled in his beard with a little bit of gray, for a long time. I've met you, Peter, in 2008. So before I was working with YACC, I was volunteering as a facilitator at a retreat, and that's where I met you. Excuse me. And Bonnie, I'm pretty sure I met you first at a conference because your
2009.
Yeah, your retreat was a little bit before me. It was 2006 or 5.
Oh, wait, 2007 actually. My
2000,
retreat with 2006, and then the conference that we met with 2007.
2007. That's it. So as you can see, we're all in the beautiful 40s club. You know, some a little closer to the end of 40s. We don't care about that. And some were just, you know, in their early 40s. Um, you have both been post-cancer for quite a while, and for having spoken to many of our community members, as we know, when it is a possibility for you, the hope that it can bring to hear people who have been diagnosed with cancer 5, 10, 15 years ago can bring kind of oxygen and maybe a little bit of hope for you. So I'm super pumped to have you both. Maybe we'll first start to talk a little bit about, you know, when you were diagnosed and where you're at now. So I know it's a long story, I'm sure, but if you can kind of say a little bit more about that. So let's go with Bonnie first.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in 2004, and I had 12 rounds of chemo between May and October, and then 15 rounds of radiation in December of that same year. So then I've had follow-up appointments leading all the way to 2010, which was the year my last cancer doctor had told me that I graduated from all my appointments, and that I didn't have to go back anymore. So then I'm like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And I didn't know what to do after that. And now, 10 years later, I'm pretty much cancer-free from anything related to cancer appointments and things like that. So that's where I am at. Yeah.
Yes. And how does that feel when you get to that place of no more appointments? Do you still have like checkups, or how does that work?
I just go to my GP regular annual checkups now.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
And how about you, Peter?
Okay, well, my story is definitely a terrible karaoke metaphor because it's testicular cancer. You usually just follow the bouncing balls, which has been my life all through cancer. Yeah, I knew I was going to make Bonnie laugh when I did that. Yeah. So I'm a two-time testicular cancer survivor. First time I was diagnosed at 26. Second time I was diagnosed at 29. Found out afterwards that my unicorn status was celebrated, given that there's a 3% chance that you can have bilateral testicular cancer with a time lapse in between. So between that and then the chemotherapy that's used commonly now for testicular cancer, as well as ovarian cancer, having been discovered in the late 90s, I'm kind of at that front of the curve, still following what does it all mean, how, like, what's the prognosis after the fact. So it's a little angsty at times, but similar to Bonnie, I went through 6 cycles of chemotherapy. I've had 3 surgeries, 2 orchiectomies, and RPLND, where it's pretty invasive and definitely open scar conversation. Love talking with other survivors about it because we sound like war vets. Like, yeah, I got this scar here. Yeah, I got this scar here. And just, it's so invigorating to be able to talk with others and just be around those who get it.
Yeah.
Speaking to what you asked Bonnie earlier, I'm at the point now where I get checkups once a year, which is great. Very mindful of gender-based cancers. So I'm out of the testicular range, and I'll be looking at the prostate stuff probably within the next 5 years, maybe 6 years, according to my oncologist. And it's a lot of deep breath gratitude. I don't take it for granted. Definitely of my generation, anyone who gets to know me knows that I'm a big fan of getting tattooed, and I have a personal affinity for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And you don't mess around when you got a tattoo that says "Fight Cancer Like a Slayer." So that's my jam. That's my jam.
I like it. I like it. And so we often say, well, pretty much almost every week, I will say at some point that it takes longer to recover from cancer than to be treated for cancer. You are both obviously 10 years plus out of your initial diagnosis, and both still in some capacity connected to the YACC community, for the most part really in a place where you have been giving back in some way, or coming to us in a way. You were both wicked, amazing team of our very first local life leaders in Toronto. But when I say it takes longer to recover from cancer than to be treated for cancer, what does that say to you within this kind of span of time since your diagnosis? How does that relate to your experience? Peter?
Um, it's definitely a perspective game changer where, you hear the expression hindsight 2020. There's that when you're in the middle of the experience where it starts with diagnosis and treatment and then having to try to emotionally and mentally metabolize everything that you're hearing. One thing that really sticks with me, and it's not designed as a shameless plug for Jeff, but I loved when he captured the expression, the first second after you're told you have cancer, you're a survivor. And that really hit home. And it made sense because it was a sense of personal empowerment and this idea that, okay, I'm in charge, not you. And I make the choices, not you. My power ends at my ability to react, but every reaction is a choice. Okay, let's do this. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful in hindsight that I have that capacity to look back, that I'm here to look back. And I keep coming back to where, I've got these grays in my beard and I'm so excited because I didn't know I was going to have them. And it's being a young adult and confronted with your mortality is just shattering. And there is no guidebook. There's no rule book. It's like anyone who's old enough to remember the movie Beetlejuice, like the handbook of the recently deceased. We don't have the handbook of the recently diagnosed. And you know what? I might be onto something there. Oh, I should write that book and get collaboration from survivors everywhere. Ooh, sorry, I got excited.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
No, that's true. And Bonnie, so I was saying, and yeah, so very true, Peter, and taking longer to recover. So we'll say to people, you're going to get through cancer. And then to what you pointed out, Peter, you're going to hopefully figure out how you can grab on to the wheels and be in control. But for a lot of our community members, they have had moments where they judged themselves because after treatment, they still were struggling. It was not clean cut, done. I'm done with treatment. I'm done with everything that comes with cancer. And some are today still saying, how long does it take? How am I normal to still have moments of struggles, even though I'm done treatment? So how was it for you, Bonnie, in that aspect?
Yeah, I remember after I got the news that I didn't have to go back to any more appointments and walked out of Sunnybrook and just stood there. I'm like, what do I do now? Like, what's going on with my life?
Yeah.
So then I came over with overwhelming emotions at that point, and then I just went home, just did whatever, just thought about it, and then within the next 5 years or so, I was still feeling weird side effects or different things that was going on with my body that felt weird, and I'm like, this still must be related to cancer or like the side effects and stuff. But then I didn't let that stop me. I just kept going, and then just wanted to move on with my life, and decided to like plan on for vacations and do things that I've been wanting to do that um, cancer had made put a pause on my life. So like getting back into my dance classes and getting back into working out, things like that, right? So as I started progressing with those things, my life started to feel like it was getting back to normal in some sense. And then the past of having cancer was going away a little bit more. So that's a pretty good start there.
Yes. And excuse me, I'm thinking you have both, but so we talk a lot about fear of cancer recurrence in our community. And for some people, and we've done the YACC Prime study, and this came out as really strong actually within our community members. And so when you are getting further away from an initial diagnosis, and so Peter, you were saying you get annual checkups, prostate is going to be a next checkup. And how have you coped with your fear of cancer recurrence? How would you say it changed or evolved over the years, Peter?
Well, I'd like to touch on what we talked about earlier, where I realized, either brought to you by the caffeine in my drink, that maybe my empowerment hat was a little too tight, and it wasn't as vulnerable as it should have been. Because, in full transparency, I was a mess after cancer diagnosis. Number one, I definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, I feel that my first psychosocial oncologist captured it best when he said to me, "No, you're just clinically pissed off. You're
Mm.
really angry." And I was angry for a long time. I couldn't pinpoint what was going on. I'm sure there was a physical dimension, but it was more, to touch on what Bonnie was saying earlier. It was this identity shift. Like, my sense of self now has this new prefix slapped onto it. And for the longest time, I was hanging on to this idea of, before I introduced my name, it was immediately tied to the fact I was a survivor.
Mm.
And I had to figure out in its own time, wait, that's just a part of who I am. It's not all of me. And that's a personal, unique journey for each person, where you will digest that in its own time, and it'll feel right. It could be an aha moment. It could be some, celestial nature-based inspiration. You never know. It's going to be unique to each individual, or maybe even you get to meet another survivor where you have that emotional decompression, or I like to say it's like my soul gets to fart and just like goes, I don't have to hold up a front anymore.
Yeah.
Awesome. So sorry, I segued with that, but I realized it was
No,
kind of,
love it.
it didn't feel like I spoke my authenticity, and that was like, you captured it. And Bonnie, I loved working with you so much. You inspire me to say and do the right things all the time. God, I need you in my life, like on speed dial, maybe a screensaver. So like, here's Bonnie dancing. Don't forget to do the right thing. I'm like, yep, it's true.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, I could not have asked for a better co-leader ever for the years that we worked together. So yeah,
You're
that's
a good team.
that's some good soul food right there. To answer your question, sorry, to be more specific.
No, thank you, Peter. That was wicked. I love that she went back. That's fine. We're chatting. It's all right.
Cool. You'll find I'm a bit of a Greek stereotype. I get it, the philosophy sometimes, and the whole notion of post-treatment, post-diagnosis, the fear of it coming back. I do think of it like that Damocles sword that's swinging. And I feel that the captured term, if it was Jeff or someone else in the YACC community, when they talked about scanxiety, that was so alive and true. I definitely, before I was at the 1 year mark, which was just such a huge end goal, to have that sense of, okay, we're only going to check up on you once a year. I walked out of Princess Margaret and I cried.
Yeah.
I was so relieved to know that, okay, now it's once a year, from once every 4 months and once every 6 months. Every time going in the magnetic donut, thinking to myself, okay, cool. Am I going to get superpowers today? No, but I don't have cancer. Awesome. And then, diagnosis 2 hits. And I'm like, what? And there was one particular staff member from PMH who said to me at the time, he goes, yeah, the treatment that we're giving you right now, you're probably going to get some kind of cancer 20 years from now, but we'll have a way to deal with it. And even today, I'm at year 18 since I first got diagnosed. I still feel that, where it's like, all right, 2 years. Like, is this a Journey song, the final countdown? Like, what am I going to do? Like, how is it going to work? And you know what? I take a deep breath and I think about it. I'll deal with it when that bridge comes, because that's all I can do. That's been my definite touchstone, with years of fantastic psychosocial oncology therapy. Not with that one, but I found a different one who, working with her for years, really helped me understand A, my process, and then B, how it applies to cancer. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And what would you say is your relationship with fear of recurrence of cancer, Bonnie, at this point in your journey?
It comes and goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first 5 years, though, it was always in the back of my mind, because I was still going to follow-up appointments. But then after I was released from all that, even at my last appointment, I was kind of feeling more confident about being healthier and not actually getting recurrence. But then as time passed in the last 10 years, it would come and go. And all I can say to myself is like, just eat healthy, exercise, and stay healthy and well. And you should be able to fight off any disease that way. But then you never know, because even as I get older, now I'm kind of fearing like, oh, I might get that secondary cancer that they warned me about, right? And that's the new fear now. And it's not really about recurrence anymore. It's just about secondary cancers.
Right. Yeah, and I think and Jeff often, like, when we talk about that, and obviously we're going to talk about it more, not to bring it in our community, but because it's a real thing, and I think it's a very human experience after going through such a trauma in your life to have moments where the fear creeps in, and to figure out ways to sometimes also sit with that fear, to not judge yourself for feeling it, to not say, oh my god, if I'm thinking it, I'm gonna create it. Sometimes it's important, I think, to connect with what comes, and then to try, and that helps understand where we are a little bit better. And I think then, to your point, Bonnie, and both you've said, what is going to give me some sense of control back, because cancer rips you off of a lot of control, and the impression of losing a lot of control. So then it's to kind of rebuild parts of your life where it's like, this gives me a sense of control. This makes me feel like I'm taking care of myself. And then, to your point, if there were guarantees, that would be fucking lovely. If someone could sign us a paper to say, you're good, never again. That doesn't happen. So ultimately, like, being in the present moment as much as possible, while knowing that, okay, if and when something comes, I'll deal with it. But I think and hope, so you're both, like I said, still connected to the young adult community, and specifically to the YACC community. Has that connection, so I know you've given back a lot and you've helped your peers a lot, but has this connection helped as well? So, when we look at healing over a long period of time after something as traumatic as getting cancer, being connected to your peers, to people who get it, how has that helped you, and how is that still helping you today, even though you're years out of cancer? Let's go with Bonnie. There you go.
When I was actually still, I guess, in remission, I was actually told that one of my coworkers was also diagnosed with lymphoma. And then 2 years later, my sister's ex-boyfriend was also diagnosed with lymphoma. And at that point, I'm like, well, now I have skills to actually support people, because I've been with the YACC community for so long. And then I was able to help them answer their questions, and then direct them to resources, and let them know how I felt, just to help their feelings. And now, years out, I'm still like always wondering how people that comes to the community are feeling. And I like to listen to their stories, just to not really compare, but just to hear their stories, and then just resonate on my experience with theirs. And yeah, it's just nice to hear their story as well.
Yeah.
And then share my story, right?
Yeah, relate, validate, reflect, like all of these things. How about you, Peter?
Sorry, after hearing that, I think that Bonnie has to add to her pronoun superhero as well. Oh,
I know, right?
I was catching feels. I was catching feels, and oof, I started feeling it. It's like, God, I miss you. Oh, just like hearing it, it's like, ooh. Sorry, like, anyone watching this, I am the epitome of emotional transparency. You're going to see it in my face. You're going to hear it in my voice. When I got married, you were there for my wedding. I clocked in at 15 cries from the vows till brunch the next day. I was just like,
why wouldn't
hold
you?
it. To answer the question, I feel that the healing process has been, how do I say this properly? I think it's an earmark of a particular person when you go through something traumatic and you look to others and see what you can give back. And I can only relate it to my own experience where we each have that individual perspective because we live in our skin, and it's just who you are. And to be able to give back in that capacity, it does provide that healing internally as well. I remember going to my first retreat in Montreal, and where we met, for those who were at the retreat, and Karine knows this, hashtag bacon dance, as her description of what it is for someone to break dance and do the worm. And she just described it as, the bacon dance. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to forget that for the rest of my life. It was beautiful.
Well, it looks like a bacon, to be fair. And it's Charlie Manuel was doing anyway.
Yeah.
Good memories, right?
It was pretty kick-ass.
Yes.
And I remember sitting in the circle, and we were talking about personal fears and how we were interpreting the moment. And I remember just being, I was such a contained box of locked emotions. I didn't want to share anything. I didn't know how to share it. And it just popped out, and they said, Peter, what is it you're afraid of? And I said, I was afraid of telling everyone here that I was gay and that I'd be rejected. Mm-hmm. And just, it was like this, just everything just waterfall, my soul didn't fart. It had diarrhea. It was just like, boom, gone. And I was like, oh, that was so cleansing. Gross, but cleansing. Okay, good. And I memorized that feeling of, I was given that moment and I had that safety. And I attribute it to, being the oldest of 3 siblings. Give that back. And that not only, lets me know that I did my best to handle things as it was presented to me as a human being with cancer, but then it continues the cycle. It's that mentorship. It's that, passing it on with, storytelling and verbal communication, and having that emotional comfort where you may think that it's just helping you, but you're actually helping me too. And you don't even know it. But then there's that whole pay it forward thing. So yeah, it's,
yes. I remember that moment so much anyway. Yeah. Geez, man, you gave me the feels here. I'm glad you felt safe enough to do that. And we want to be that space and want to be better in that way. But man alive, that was powerful. This is great. And I feel like we could just continue on and on. But to link with what you just said, so there are 2 things that came to mind. And really giving back wherever you are in your journey. So if you are lucky enough to have 10, 15, 18 years since an initial diagnosis, or if you're still in the midst of it, or if you're going to live with your diagnosis, I think it's to just remember a lot of what you both just said, to give back from where you are, and to trust that whatever you contribute, whatever you share in the moment, it feels good to share it. The impact and repercussion it can have on someone else is often unknown. Sometimes we say things, we share from, Bonnie shared her kind of experience. And for you, Peter, it kind of triggered for you to say, well, I actually was not connecting to my emotions there. I'm going to go back and actually I'm going to say how it was for me. And so sometimes that's what we can do for each other. So we always say, like, for us, whenever we talk with our beautiful community members, and some of them have done pretty incredible things, the idea is not to be the superhero of cancer, of doing a million things, but sometimes, and I know you both have done it so beautifully in your years with YACC, is to be yourself and be present in the community the way it feels right to you. And by doing that, you're contributing to the healing of your peers, of the community, and, really to me, of the world at large. Thank you, you both. And so to close it off, I do want to say, so as we're talking about community and as we're talking about being a few years out of the 39, we have had a lot of questions. So we're going to try and clarify the age criteria of YACC. But basically, for years, it's been, anyone who's 18 to 39, like diagnosed between 15 and 39, age 18 to 39 to come to our events. Community grew and grew and grew over the years. And so people like you both, for example, kind of came to us and said, I'm turning 40 next year. I kind of still like to hang out with my YACC people. What happens? So we were like, oh my God, that's true. This community, this family is getting so big. So Survivor Conference really became just come as often and as long as you want, even if you're 40, 41, 42, 43. So this is kind of how YACC's community has evolved. And since then, within the local life, so we have local life in 8 cities in the country. We have also kind of applied this kind of criteria where if you've turned 40, but you've, as long as you've been diagnosed before 39, right now, that's the key element that we would want you to know. And then, of course, this online world for us, it's like, you know what? If you're not sure, connect with us. But if you've been diagnosed before 39 years old and you feel like this community speaks to you, reach out to us. And, chances are you're going to have access to resources. So talking about that, to close it off, Peter B, as we love to call him, because we had 2 Peters at that retreat. So you were Peter B, you remember? And then there was another Peter C. Anyway.
Oh, this is going to go like that movie Highlander. There can only be one. We have to sword fight. It's going to be virtual. I plan on winning.
We'll plan this. So Peter approached us, and as some of you know, and if you don't, you should, we have been running since the beginning of this pandemic, but now it's going to go on forever, we hope, these weekly chats that are led by our community members. So we have some community members who have been trained and are supported by YACC's team, but they lead chats where they talk about different themes every week. And Peter connected with us and said, I would kind of like to do something, and maybe to do something for our kind of Generation X kind of people who are maybe closer to 40 or a little after 40, and who still would find benefit to be able to connect in a chat and have a conversation. So we were like, this is wicked. Let's just do it. So once a month, you are going to be offering these GenX chats. So again, if you're not sure if it's you, just connect and we'll let you know. But ultimately, it's going to be led by you. Tell us a few words about that in a couple of minutes, Peter.
So the idea for the GenX chat definitely spurred from, believe it or not, it was just a passing conversation where it was a metaphor, this idea, we were talking about fairy tales and, and then they lived happily ever after. Well, how often do you actually know what happened? What happened the next day with Cinderella? Did she do the dishes? Was there talk about having kids? We don't know. Did the glass slippers crack? It could be a whole bunch of stuff. And the same rings true for us. Those of us, as you said, when we're lucky enough to get those grays and we're around long enough to have these thoughts and feelings, and what does life mean after cancer? What does it mean? How do you incorporate this into your schema? That is its own journey. It also presents its own set of challenges. So anyone who's watching that's interested in this type of format in monthly chat, we're going to be looking at the really hard-hitting topics, and then some things are going to be super light. I am just as open to the idea of having 90 minutes of silliness where we just belly laugh and cancer's not allowed in the room for that day, or we can just jump right down that rabbit hole because I got spikes on my shoes and I'm ready to walk back up to the top and bring whoever I got to bring with me, which is okay. And that's something where I personally, and it's not meant to be a shameless plug or lip service, is thanking YACC for giving me and Bonnie that kind of inspiration where we have those tools in our back pockets and having that ability to be there for our support and for our peers. It's hard not to flash back to the very first young adult cancer big hookup where I was lucky enough to be a panelist, and it was here in Toronto. And I remember it just kind of popped out of my mouth. I never said it before, this idea of, I've got this roadmap. And if you can take something from it and it makes sense to you, that's awesome. But why should I keep it to myself? It doesn't make any sense because I didn't have no roadmaps. There was nobody around at that time when I first went through it. And then I found YACC. So it all kind of comes around full circle. And, the circle's not always round, but I'm glad the circle's there.
Thank you, Peter. And so for those interested in listening right now, the chats, monthly chats are going to start, I believe, January 14. But I think that's the first chat, and they're going to be monthly. All the information is going to be on our website, youngadultcancer.ca. So you can check this out. If you have questions, you can connect with us on that. Thank you both so much for this amazing conversation. If in a few seconds, if you had one message you wanted to tell maybe someone who's brand new, never connected, or someone who's been connected and in this cancer world for a long time, what could it be? Bonnie?
That's a good question.
Can be simple, you know? What does your heart say?
Just stay positive and look right into your future, because there's always something out there that you can reach for.
Yeah. And Peter?
I am going to flash back to one of my favorite books that I read, which is The Four Agreements. And specifically in it is just the idea of always do your best, meaning that today you might do a 7 out of 10, tomorrow might be a 2 out of 10. But if you know that you gave it 100% for what was applicable that day, you're a rock star. Go to sleep with a full heart and a peaceful mind. There's no one judging you but you, and it's okay.
Love this. Look out for what's ahead of you, because there could always be something there, and then just do your best. This is wicked great advice. And so as I leave you, thank you both so much, a million times. I loved my time with you. And for those of you watching today, you know what I'm going to say. Just breathe. Remember to just breathe. Breathe through the hard stuff. Breathe through the good stuff. Breathe when you feel great and you want to let some of that out in the world. Breathe when you feel horrible, so that you can take that out as well, outside of you. But don't forget to do that. Don't forget of the power of our breath. It is one of the most grounding and calming thing we can do for our body, for all the cells in our body, for our brain, for our muscles, for our arms, for blood, everything. So when everything else fails, just breathe for a few minutes. See how that helps, and breathe as long as you need to so that it can help you. Thank you again. Thank you everyone who's been with us. Hopefully you can join us next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure what's going to be next week because we're recording a bunch of these and putting them in the future. So we are already in 2021 when we're filming this, even though we are not. We're still in 2020. So have a great rest of the day for you. And thank you both, and goodbye.
Thank you.